Hello everybody, and welcome to today's presentation, How to Beat the Biggest Bottleneck to Continuous Cloud Deployments, Manual Testing, brought to you by CA Technologies. Before we get started, I'd just like to take care of a couple of housekeeping items. First, I'd like to make sure that you all can hear me okay, so if you would, just send me a quick message in the chat window to let me know that you can hear me. Great, looks like everybody can hear me just fine. If you have any questions for our presenters today, please be sure to post those into the questions panel so we can get to them after the presentation. If you experience any technical difficulties today, like the audio dropping out or the screen sharing is not displaying properly, please post a message in the chat panel to me, the host, and I'll work with you to try and resolve those issues. Lastly, on the housekeeping list, we are recording today's presentation and will be making it available shortly after the event concludes. Okay, so now that we've gotten through the housekeeping items, I'd like to go ahead and introduce you to our presenters today. From our sponsor, CA Technologies, we have Keith Pusey, Senior Principal Engineering Services Architect on the Continuous Delivery and Testing Engineering SWAT team. Keith has worked in the IT industry for over 30 years and started his career as a hardware engineer working for Digital Equipment Corporation before moving on to work for a consulting company supporting trading floors in London, specializing on supporting Microsoft Windows and Novell networks. Keith joined CA Technologies over 18 years ago, originally within the System Management Business Unit, before moving to work for CA Development as a member of the Engineering Services team, where he specialized in supporting CA's Unicenter and automation range of products. Over the last 4 years, Keith has been working within the DevOps business unit, specializing on CA's testing tools and supporting CA's customers and EMEA. Now I'd like to do a quick sound check for Keith. So Keith, if you'd like to say hello to our audience, and audience, please let me know if you can hear Keith by posting a message in the chat panel.
Thanks so much. Yeah, welcome. Good morning, good evening, wherever you are.
Great, looks like everybody can hear you just fine. Our other presenter today is Titus Fortner, Solutions Architect at SauceLabs. Titus is a core contributor to the Selenium project and the maintainer of the Ruby bindings. He spends a significant amount of time writing open source testing software built on top of Selenium. He is the project lead for Watir and Watir project, really sorry if I mispronounced that, and is active in supporting these projects on Stack Overflow, message boards, and in the Selenium, Slack, and IRC. Titus has implemented automated tests at 5 different companies and currently works at SauceLabs as a solution architect, working with the community to facilitate testing best practices. So just like Keith, I'd like to do a quick sound check for Titus. So Titus, if you'd like to say hello to our audience, and audience, please let me know if you can hear Keith by posting a message in the chat panel.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today.
Great. Well, without any further ado, I'm going to turn things over to Keith to begin our presentation. Keith, take it away.
Thanks very much. So welcome. Today we're going to talk about continuous testing and how that fits into continuous delivery. And obviously there's a lot of people on this call and there's a lot of interest in this space. Now, what is the challenge? What are the challenges you have when it comes to actually delivering software quicker? Now, how do you get your ideas from that inception all the way through your pipeline to value that your customers get in a way that's reliable, and it's quick, and that the business actually accepts? Because a lot of the time, when we talk about continuous delivery, we talk about the speed of speeding up your pipeline, but the quality is key, and that's the security quality as well as the actual quality of the code that you're deploying. And today we're going to talk about what some of those bottlenecks are. And how CA and SauceLabs can help you in this space. Just change slides. Okay. So the answer is continuous testing, but also when we talk about continuous testing, this is a key tenet when we talk about continuous delivery. So within CA, I work in the continuous delivery business unit, and within that business unit, we have a large range of tools that not only cover the testing angle, but also other components such as service virtualization, things that you can do with infrastructure. And through the presentation, we're going to look at what some of these bottlenecks are, and then how CA's toolset can actually help you. We'll then talk a little bit about how SauceLabs can also help, and then there's a demonstration that shows the tools working together. So bringing together a scenario and showing you how, with a demonstration, how CA can actually address this. Now, we talk about Agile, a bit like we talk about continuous delivery, and a lot of companies talk about their Agile, or they're moving towards Agile, and these are all the terms that you've probably seen. But generally, companies they're in transition, so they're doing either part of this, or they're semi-Agile, or they're kind of waterfall. When you're trying to drive this continuous delivery pipeline, Agile is just part of that. As well as being Agile and having all these great things, Scrums and your product owners and product managers, where is the issue? I mean, you can have a fully Agile engineering department, but what is stopping you from actually being truly efficient in your release? You can see here that Computing in the UK did some research, and this is the output for one of their questions. Now, where is the bottleneck? Where is the biggest issue you have in your pipeline, and what can you do to improve it? And you can see here they've called out that their testing and their QA is by far the biggest bottleneck to the actual speed of delivery. And there's a fine line, there's a balance here. Obviously, you want to be fast and you want to deliver quickly. However, you don't want to deliver bad code. So you need to test, and you need to test efficiently, but that testing shouldn't slow down your release cycle. And this is a challenge that I'm sure you've all had, and you all have day to day. How much do we need to test, and how efficient is that testing? Now, we don't want to push bad code, but we want to get new features out. So as we go through another survey, so this is Freeform that CA actually published, lots of businesses and companies all want to get into continuous testing. They all want to speed up their pipeline. They all want to improve their quality. And what are the challenges that actually come from that? So most of the respondents actually identified that continuous testing is very important to them. It's something that they're all looking at. It's on their radar. It's something they need to actually achieve. But there are blockers that actually stop them actually fully engaging with continuous testing. One of the blockers, on the bottom left here, you can see is that quite often testing tools are still quite complicated. Now, still the remit of our QA teams that will use their own testing tools. Some are quite old, and we're still on this path where we get to QA. They run a lot of tests using their testing tools. So how can we actually move that to the engineers so they can actually do their own testing? So that's kind of the middle section, is to actually really adopt continuous testing. What you need is an easier set of tool sets, a simpler tool set that can be run almost on demand, so you can run tests very early in your testing cycles. And also, probably more importantly, is there's a shift in mindset. So we can talk about technology, we can talk about tools. At the end of the day, the business and the engineering teams have to kind of change the way they think about testing. And that kind of comes down to we need to test more because we need to have no defects, over we need to get more features out. So the business needs to kind of understand that to get more features out quicker, there's a trade-off on how much testing, and therefore there's a trade-off on how many defects may escape. So let me just build this slide. During the research that CA actually took out, was we looked at the leaders. So we actually spoke to individuals and companies that actually have focused on continuous testing, and we see them as being leaders in that space, and they've achieved an awful lot of the continuous testing within their organizations. And these are some of the highlights from that report. And the main thing is, if you do continuous testing well, you will speed up your release cycles, you will actually improve your quality, and you will also have more confidence in the release. So the business and the organization will actually have more confidence in the quality of what's being delivered. And by doing that, you then can reduce your defects. So improve quality, reduce defects, and also more importantly, find those defects early. A real issue when we talk about testing is, as you all know, a defect found in production costs a lot more than a defect found when the engineer's coding. The earlier you can find a defect, the quicker you can fix it, the less expensive that defect will be to the business. So what is continuous testing? Now, we've listed here things that it kind of isn't. So these are things that sometimes they talk about continuous testing. They may talk about test automation, CI, unit testing. No, some people think continuous testing is just you do it in the test environment. And also, no, it's a QA activity. And one thing that is key when you talk about continuous testing is it's not a QA responsibility. Testing is the responsibility of everyone, from the engineer through the QA. Everyone within the cycle needs to be looking at not just the what testing's going on, but also feeding back testing. And we'll talk about that shortly in just a little while. So that's not what continuous testing is not. So what is continuous testing? And it's testing across the whole of your SDLC. So from the initial engineering committing code, all the way through to your UAT testing, your performance testing, all the way through to production, every phase should be done with testing. And that's the performance testing, functional testing, security testing. And to achieve that, obviously, you need to actually change the mindset of how you actually think about testing. And that's kind of what this slide shows. Is this is your traditional how we do testing. Now, we come up with an idea, we write a requirement, and therefore we now know that requirement. We then go off and create our test cases. We identify environments we need, perhaps test data we need. We build those environments, we get that test data, and then eventually we'll execute our test cases. We'll find an issue, we fix the issue. And this is something that's been done within the IT industry for decades. One of the biggest issues when we actually do this is that when you identify that defect, that may be days or weeks after the engineer actually finished that work. So that engineer has now moved on to other projects or other parts of the code. He's actually doing other things. So when the defect's identified, to actually go back to fix the defect is quite an overhead. That engineer has to go back, reopen the code, identify the issue and fix it, and then go back through this cycle. So it's very expensive in the way that, from an engineering perspective, the engineers have to spend that time kind of re-gearing themselves back up to go back and fix the issue. But also, we need to shorten this circle. We need to make it a lot quicker. We need to basically remove that layer. So what we need to be able to do is define our requirements, model those requirements in a way that we can then easily generate our test cases, automated test cases, and then run those test cases. So we can run these test cases very early and often. So we can run a test case as often as we need to. Those defects are identified very early, which means it's quicker for the engineers to then pick up that defect and resolve it, ideally early during the engineering phases. And what CA has is we have a suite of tools that actually help you in this space. So I mentioned earlier about quality is owned by everyone. So within the whole engineering cycle, we have this little circle, and around the edges, we have our tool sets, the CA tool set. So the first tool set we have is something called Agile Requirement Designer. So this can actually take your requirements from things like Jira and from CA Agile Central and model out your requirements. And this does two things. One is it helps you better define your requirements, because quite often poorly defined requirements actually lead to defects. But also it can automatically generate test cases. So you can build out your requirements in the Agile Requirement Designer, and it can output you manual and automated test cases. But also, when we start talking about testing, a lot of the issues you get come around environments. You may need a particular server or a service that isn't readily available, and you may have to wait for that to be available. You have to create a service desk ticket to get access to it. With service virtualization, we can virtualize those services, those expensive services that you can't readily get to, so that you can test as often as you need to. You just start the virtual service, you run your tests, and you can then shut that virtual service down afterwards. And then the next problem is obviously test data, and with GDPR, PII data, this is becoming more and more of an issue that you can't test with data from your live system. So how do you manage that test data? How do you do your subsetting, your masking? In our case, we also do synthetic data. So don't even bother with your production data. We generate the data you need. So there's no risk of any PII data leakage. And again, making that data available to engineering very early. And then obviously running the test. So CA application tests allows you to run UI and API tests. We're going to show some other testing tools in a little while. So this is just one of our testing frameworks. And we also are going to show during the demonstration is Blaze Meter and Blaze API. So this is a SaaS-based solution. So this allows you to run performance testing and functional API testing on-premise and also in the cloud. And we'll show you that in just a little while. And one thing that I kind of talked about at the very start was around security. So a lot that we often talk about when we talk about continuous testing, functional testing, performance testing, making sure that the code does what it should do. But security becomes more of an issue. As you speed up this testing and speed up this development, you need to speed up the way you identify security issues. So we have a tool called Veracode that can actually do that. It can scan your code, it can scan your sites. And again, we're going to show that as part of the demonstration, how you can incorporate your security testing within your overall continuous testing. And we're going to use our continuous delivery director as our dashboard into what's happening. So during the demonstration, we're going to show you how we can actually drive all this through our dashboard. And also one thing that you can then do afterwards, let me just stop this spinning because it's annoying, is CA Digital Experience Insight. So what happens after you've deployed it? So you've deployed your app to your website. How do you know what the end user experience is once you've deployed it? And again, we're going to show you that in a second. We're going to show you how we can gather data and telemetry from the people using your application. Now what we've seen here is obviously these are all the CA tool sets. But one of the things that CA has always been is that we're heterogeneous. We integrate with many third parties. And what I'd like to do is hand over to Titus to talk about SauceLab and how he integrates with the CA toolset.
Great, thanks. So SauceLabs. This SauceLabs is that stage in the testing where you want to make sure that your users can do the things on your application that you intend for them to be able to do. And we do that by providing the infrastructure with the exact combination of browsers and operating systems and versions and Selenium drivers and software to execute the tests so that your users can be confident that you can be confident that your users are getting the experience that you want for them to have. And so we've got a very strong history with the Selenium project itself, sharing the same creator of each, and just provide a lot of options for how you can run both your web applications and your mobile applications. So next slide. There we go. So one of the big things, so the first approach a lot of people take when they start to write their automated tests, they usually take the approach the manual testers do, which is like, all right, let's start at the beginning and then automate all the way through this whole flow of, from creating a user all the way through doing all of these things. And one of the things that we really push for at SauceLabs is getting people to focus on shorter, more specific tasks. We call it atomic and autonomous. And you want to make them independent, so the idea is you can run a bunch of shorter tests at the same time, and because of the way that we virtualize our service, you essentially get a brand new environment for every single test that gets run, and so you can run all of these tests at the same time. So instead of having everything from beginning to end take, if every test is a minute long, testing it in serial will be 9 minutes. And if you can run them all in parallel, you can cut that down to 1 minute. So, and that's infinitely scalable. So let's next slide. Great, thanks. So one of the big problems that people have in this, companies often have, is the difficulties of setting up and maintaining all of the different combinations of browser versions and operating systems and things like that in order to get the information about the functionality of the website. And SauceLabs does a really great job of managing all of that complexity for you, essentially allowing you to focus on just the testing, and it gives you all of the extra screenshots and videos and logs, and we'll show that in the demo here coming up. So in the next slide, please. Essentially, SauceLabs is just saving you time, allowing you to focus on the things that are going to provide more value to you without wasting time figuring out how to maintain, did we update the driver when the browser updated? Did we update the browser? Oh, we're not testing on Windows 10. And not having to troubleshoot really long tests because you've broken them up into shorter tests that can run in parallel. So we'll get into more of that when we get to the demo. So I'll give that back to Keith.
Thanks, Titus. So we're going to go and do a demo to actually show you, what we just talked about. And to start with, we're actually going to do a raffle. So CA Marketing have actually put their hands deep in their pockets, and we're going to give away some $50 Amazon vouchers. So this is your chance to actually interact with the demo. So if you can go to this URL, so http://cdbu.io, on your phones, on your desktop machines, whatever you've got, you better go and enter the raffle. Just enter your name, and what we'll do is at the end of the demonstration, we're going to come back to this, and we'll draw 3 winners. And Christine from marketing will be spending some money. So if you you'll come to this page, and as you'll see, this is our raffle site. And what we've got is down the bottom here, we've got our build number, and what you should find, because this is a bit of a trick. So as you try to enter this raffle, you would have got this message, and what we're seeing here is that we have our application pushed to production. It's out there, it's in the big bad world. However, we obviously haven't finished implementing this feature. So in the demonstration, we're going to show you us basically testing this new feature and deploying it, and we're going to come back to this screen at the end, and at that point you will be getting a chance to enter this raffle. So let me just go back to there, and we're going to start with our CD Director. So this is CD Director. This is a SaaS-based tool, and this is showing us our dashboard into our pipeline. So we've got various things on the screen. On the left, we've got an overview of our productivity, how many automated tasks we're running, how much time we're spending with failures. Here we've got a breakdown of the environments we're deploying into and how much manual time we spend in each of those environments. So again, identifying where we're spending a lot of manual time. Is there something we can do to improve that as we actually try and improve our release cycles? And as you just saw in our website, we haven't got that new feature. And if we go to our report screen, one thing that's very important about when we're talking about this kind of technology is linking this back to the business. So now we can talk about releases and pipelines, but the important thing is the content of that release. So on this screen here, these lines here, like US 63, this is actually a user story in CA Agile Central in Rally. And we sync Agile Central and Jira with the product. So the bottom line here is shown as the user story, and the top line is actually shown as a defect in Jira, just to show we can integrate to both tools. And what we can see is that this user story is actually in our development QA and pre-production build 84. But in our production state, we've got build 40. So what we're going to show you is actually, let's take this build. We're going to take from Jenkins. We're going to kick off a release and run it through our CD pipeline and run our continuous testing. So we're going to go to the release screen. Now this is a typical release screen. So this is built by the release team. Basically, if you've got a spreadsheet of things you need to do, you map that to this, and what we've done in this case is, this is slightly unusual, this isn't what we normally do. Each of these columns in our case here, we've broken down into different testing. What we normally see on the screen is, the first phase might be development, development. The next phase might be QA, might be performance testing, UAT. You basically break the release down into the columns of things you need to do. And then each column, each of these boxes is a task. So in this case, we're saying we need to deploy the update to Amazon. We need to run some functional API testing. We're going to send a Slack message to say that that's finished. And then you can have this automated promotion so that when that's complete, we'll actually go through, run UI testing with SauceLabs. Then we're going to run performance testing with BlazeMeter, barcode scan for security. And when we're all done and we're happy that the code is good, we'll release this into production, at which point the Raffle will be live again and we'll do the draw. Now on this screen, as I mentioned, that's the phases, but on the left-hand side, this is also that content from that external system. So these are the user stories from Rally that are aligned to the release we're looking at, and these are the defects from Jira that are aligned to this release. So the release team have a visibility of what the payload is of the release they're working on, now what the actual things they're actually delivering. And you can see one of those things is this enable the Raffle submit button. So we're going to start by actually just kicking this off. Now I can kick this off by just clicking the play button, but we're going to kick it off from Jenkins. So here's our build in Jenkins, and you can see the last build was build 84. I'm going to click build now. We just started build 85, and what you'll see straight away in that first phase on the left-hand side is we've now taken that build from Jenkins and we're actually deploying it into our AWS Beanstalk stack. So we have a pre-production stack we're deploying it into. When that deployment is complete, which only takes a few seconds, we're then going to actually run our first batch of testing. So this is just going to be purely functional API testing. So we're going to use Blaze API, which is part of BlazeMeter, to do this. So we're now initiating, the CDD tool is now talking to our Blaze platform to initiate the API test. So while that's starting, if I just go up here and we just click on this button, you'll see there, we're just starting the API test. So what we're doing here is we're actually standing up, in this case, a cloud-based agent. That will then run a series of tests, and those tests will then be passed back to our CD system. Now that will take a minute or so. When that's finished, we'll then automatically go on to this step where we've got a rule that basically says to notify the development team that this build has actually gone through this first phase. You'll also notice in that bottom right hand corner there's a build number, so we can see the Jenkins build number that was used for that deployment. So we can see here that build 85 was deployed there, that's build 84. So from this screen you have visibility of when these tasks last ran, what build was delivered, and also we have many other plugins. So this is just a subset. We have many other plugins for various other technologies that you can use to actually drive from CDD. So that's kicked off that API test. We're now going to promote into next environment, and what we're going to do is we'll come back to review that API report in a little while. So what we'll do is we're going to go into the next phase, kick off our next phase, which is our UI testing, and that will then kick off a series of SauceLab tests. And what we've got here is 2 SauceLab tests. As titles are saying, now we're saying here we want to test Safari on a Mac, we want to test Windows IE 10 on Windows 8. You can actually define all this, now which platform, which browser, and at this point, while this is running, we're going to hand over to Titus, who's going to show you the SauceLabs screen and walk you through that.
Great. Let's see here. Okay, can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, so essentially I have kicked off this to run on a bunch of, you can see here the different platform versions, Windows and OS X and Firefox 47 and Microsoft Edge 14, and so all of these will get kicked off. So like on your dashboard here for SauceLabs, you can group these into builds. They'll show up as tests here. We'll take a look at a given test here and see what you see. So the first thing you can do is you can take a look at the video of what we just ran. So it'll take a second to get up and going. So here you go. It enters the user, and it verifies that we got the cross-fingered. And it shows you the exact commands that Selenium server received. You get the inputs and the outputs with screenshots. And so each action will update with a screenshot automatically. Provides you your logs and then information about what you've passed in on these. So in addition to that, for this particular demo, you can see all of the results of this. And additionally, SauceLabs provides ability to take a look at, start a manual session and pick your browser operating system and interact with it on our service. We also have analytics data that will give you information about what you've run and when and what's passed. And so there's a lot more information that you can get from SauceLabs than just the pass or fail of the different platforms. So I'll turn it back over to Keith now.
Thanks, Titus. Let me just get control.
Cool.
Okay. So you should see my screen now, hopefully. Try that again.
Yeah, we can see your screen, Keith.
Excellent. Okay, great. Yeah, so what we've got here is, I actually paused this, so we run those tests. Now, if I go to SauceLabs here, you'll see that's the two tests we just kicked off. So Titus was showing more detail. So that's the two tests we just kicked off, and you can see there the Windows and the Safari. So at this point, we know we've done some UI tests. We know the API is working. Our development team can see here, they've got a Slack message to say that we've gone through development, we've gone through our functional testing. And what I'm going to do now is, like I said, this was automated before, I made it manual just to stop the demo. We're now going to say, right, let's do a performance test. So normally your performance test you tend to do late in the development cycle. No, you've done all this other testing first and then you do your performance testing. With BlazeMeter, you can basically do performance testing whenever you need to. And you can do this on premise and in the cloud. So you can choose to run a performance test from various cloud platforms in various parts of the world, or you can actually run the test through an on-premise agent. So BlazeMeter itself is a SaaS product, but it can initiate tests through an on-premise agent, so you can actually run tests within your firewall. So what we're doing here is, again, we're deploying the application, so we're going through these phases of deploying the application, and then we're going to kick off our BlazeMeter test. And that will start in just a few seconds. And while it's doing that, let me go to BlazeMeter. There you go, it's just starting. So that's the test just starting. So you can see there, we're now initiating BlazeMeter. So the first thing we're doing is, in this case, we're using Google in the East Coast of the US to initiate our testing agents. We're starting that on the Google platform. And once that's started, we're going to initiate the test. And while that's running, let me just briefly go and show you that API test that we did at the very start. So this is an API testing screen. Now in this case, we actually just tested an API just to show it working. But as part of our API testing, you can see here we did a range of positive, negative, and edge cases. So our positive tests, as you can see here, we expected to get a 200, we got a 200, that's a pass. Whereas our negative test cases, you can probably guess, we expect to get a non-200, and because we got non-200, we had a pass. Now we can actually do a lot more than this. This is obviously just an overview, and obviously you test a lot more APIs normally. You can also sort this by failed, no, only failed ones or all. And if we go back to our performance test, what you see here is this is just about finished start coming up. So what's happening is we're starting the engines on this cloud platform. We'll then initiate the test. In this instance, we're actually simulating 600 concurrent users. So the test is actually running a JMeter test in this instance. So we generate the JMeter test. We actually have a conversion tool where you can take things like LoadRunner and convert them into BlazeMeter test as well. We have a recorder, so you can record your own tests through the UI. So in many ways you can actually generate the test cases. And then what you do is you then define what is your performance test. So while that's just starting, let me go and look at our test. So this is the test configuration. So we've got our test there. On this side, what we do is we define the location, so where we're going to run the test from. And you see here we've got geographical and different services, so AWS, Google, Azure in various parts of the world. These private locations are on-premise, so these are locations within the CA network where I can choose to run my tests on a particular part of an agent within the CA network. And all you then do is you specify how many users you want to simulate, ramp up time, and how long the test is going to run for. So you could choose to run this test for a few minutes or hours. And also on the left-hand side here, we can also integrate with APM type tools, so CA and third parties, to actually either gather data from those APM tools to include in our reports, or to actually mark the APM system to say we've started a performance test. So if we now go and look at this test, it should be running. There you go, it's running. So you can see we've started our user load, and what we're doing is we're looking at the hits and the errors generated from this test. And at the top of the screen, we have our overview of how the test is performing. A bit like when you saw SauceLabs, you have access to all the logs, so you can go look at the logs that are generated by the testing tool. And also we have things like a timeline report, so you can actually generate your own reports of the test we're running. And we also have what's called an executive summary, so a simplified view of the test we're running. So you can see here we've got a high-level view of the slowest responses, top errors, and all the details on the test we just ran. And as soon as this test is completed, we can go back to our CDD tool. And what we can see here is we've now passed. So we've gone through our performance testing. So at this point, we know our UI is working, our APIs are working. Scaling-wise, we can support up to 600 users. And we've gone into our security testing phase. Now, we could have actually automatically gone and checked with Veracode that we'd passed the security check. We've put a manual check in just to show the fact that these pipelines can be fully automatic, or they can be a mixture of automatic and manual if you've still got tasks that require manual intervention. So if I go to Veracode, what we can see is at the very start, we actually posted the build into Veracode. So at the very start of this demonstration, our Jenkins system posted the build we just generated and pushed it out to Veracode. And Veracode allows us to do security scanning of the software. So you can see there that build 85, which is the build we just kicked off in Jenkins. Here's our report for build 85. And also, we did a scan today of the site itself. So you can do an active scan of the application live on your system and get a report. And in this case, we're doing a scan of the code itself. We actually uploaded the zip file, and we then look at the report. And what we have is a summary of what was found. And now, when you set up Veracode, you kind of dictate how important the application is. And we can see here that we set this as a medium, and basically we met enough criteria that it passes our medium verification. And when we look at our recommendations, we get some information on, in this case, they found a medium error. This is the details on what that error is, and an idea as to how long it would take to fix it. So should this be something, a blocker, you have the information as to how long this kind of issue would normally take to fix. And as I said, we also did a scan of the website, so that's a dynamic scan. So we could have kicked off a dynamic scan which actually points to our website, and we get a very similar report, which shows you again any issues found, not just with the code, but perhaps the server configuration. So at this point, what we've done is we're happy that our code is it's passed our criteria. I can release this step and say we're done. We've now got the final message from Slack to say it's all done. So at this point, we're good to promote this into production, and we're going to do that. So this one here, even though it's set to automatic, we included an approval gate. So we can't push to production without someone from this team approving this release. So I'm going to actually approve it. We're now ready to go, and I'm going to deploy this into production. Now you can see in the production phase we have some different tasks, mainly because as we go through the different phases, there are different things you need to do. In production, we may need to disable monitoring, update service desk tickets. There are many things that have to get done. So we've just got a simple example here of disable the monitoring, do our deployment, enable monitoring, make sure things are working, update the release team. In our case, we're going to update Agile Central and say we're done. And also, we have a step to go and check the user experience, which we're going to come back to. Now that says we're done. So if we go back to our application, oh, someone's already entered the raffle. You guys are quick. So as you can see here, we're live now because we're getting entries. If I click on there, what we'll see is on the raffle screen, the main thing that's changed is you can now see that build number. So that build 85 that we created in Jenkins is now pushed to our production stack. And we've got 3 entries. If you guys want to take part in the raffle and win Amazon vouchers, we'll give it a minute or so just to give you a chance to get entered. We're going to choose three winners, so we've got time to just let you do this. And then when this is done, in fact, while you're doing this, let me go and show you our AXA product. That'll give you a chance to enter the raffle. So one thing that we're actually doing is also the post-user experience. So you're now using the application we just deployed. And if I go to our app analytics, within the application, we're actually gathering data on the website and the usage of that website. So if I go into our data studio and we look at our dashboard, what we're looking at here is telemetry data from you guys. So these are the browsers that are currently being used to hit our website. So we've got Chrome, a lot of you guys are using Chrome, Firefox, Safari, IE, very few Edge, one Edge. In Chrome, we can see here, well done, most of you guys are on build 60. There's a few on 59, 61, okay, and 51. So a really old version of Chrome, along with GA versions. And also on the left-hand side, we can see most users are on Windows, some Windows 7, some iOS devices. So this data is coming from, as you're hitting our website, hitting this application site, we're now getting telemetry data. So this is kind of moving the testing beyond deployment. We're now in production. Let me just refresh this screen. And we'll see if there's any more of it, if it updates. So there you go. So we've now got our telemetry data. Oh, some Android devices as well. So Android 6, iOS 10.3.3, Windows 7. Yeah. So this enables the engineering team to look past the deployment into their user base to see how the tool's been used. And as you can see there, someone's using Linux as well. So a nice mixture of platforms. So let's go back to the raffle. And 79 entries, that's very good. Let me just refresh this screen, and that should activate the button. So I think we're good to do the draw. So if I click and the winner are, and the winners are, we should get, well done guys. So you 3 are the winners, and I'm sure Christine will be reaching out to you post the event to give you your Amazon vouchers. So that's the end of the demo, and at this point I think we're ready to go to Q&A, unless Christine's got any questions for us already.
I do have a few questions. Just starting from the top, I wanted to say that both SauceLabs product that you just saw and Continuous Delivery Director are both products that are live now. And in our follow-up email, we'll send you guys the links, but both do have freemium/trial levels. So here are a couple of questions. So the first one is, how do I automate, how to automate the creation of scripts from requirements? Generally, I create manual scripts and then automate them. Do you think there is a better way? And part of this question too is, does this pipeline to production deploy assume 100% automated test coverage, and how can I achieve that? I don't know if Titus or Keith, if you both want to try to answer that one, or who wants to start on that one.
Yeah, I can step in on that. There's actually been some really interesting conversation in the community recently because the most recent version of Firefox no longer supports Selenium IDE, and so the way a lot of people have approached writing their tests from the standpoint, it sounds like the questioner has, is to use a record and playback device to create something that they can then run, and we discourage that because it's really hard to maintain test suites that are built from record and playback tools. And so we really do encourage people to, and companies to, invest in writing Selenium code from the code itself rather than from a record and playback tool. As far as how do you figure out what requirements are, I mean, that's a whole hour talk right there, just trying to figure out like what is good enough for automating to get enough warm fuzzies to know that you should be releasing your code. But yes, the idea is that this is 100% automated and that you get all of the confidence you need that your build is good based on the automated tests that you have.
Great. Keith, did you want to add anything to that, or are we good to move on?
I think the only thing I'd say is, from a CA perspective, obviously our requirement designer tool is designed to map those requirements to testing and to generate the testing scripts as well. So that's something else you could review. And I would agree, the idea is that within ARD as well, a requirements designer is to identify the best, most efficient testing. So with your testing scripts, if you can do 100%, that's perfect. But obviously sometimes, time permitting, you have to go, well, what's the most optimum? And tools like requirements designer can actually help you identify those key tests.
Perfect. The next question I had is this for web-based application APIs, or can it also handle client-based applications?
Do you want me to take that one?
Yeah,
start with?
Yeah, go ahead, Keith.
Thanks. Within the CA toolset, we actually have tools that cope with all those, so thick UIs as well as web-based. What we showed you today was very much focused on web-based UIs and web-based APIs. We have other tool sets that you can also use to do other, more API detail testing and different types of API testing, as well as different types of UI testing. Do you want to add anything, Titus? Just
that I want to point out that SauceLabs provides both browser automation through Selenium and native app support through Appium.
Great. And building on what you were just saying, Titus, we got the question, could you tell us quickly how SauceLabs is different than what JMeter does?
So JMeter is focused on performance of a site, and so you're trying to balance how much load you're putting and how long it's taking pages to load. Selenium is essentially providing infrastructure for you to automate a browser and make sure that when the user fills out a form, the right information is getting sent and displayed on the website and things like that. So it's a very different product.
Great, thank you. And then one more, can continuous delivery director automatic log defects as Selenium, Appium, as these scripts run results? What is the tie-in back there? Keith, can you help us with that one?
So sorry, what was the question?
Can continuous delivery director automatically log defects as the Selenium, Appium, et cetera, different scripts run results? Like, what is the tie-in back there? Can you share that with us?
Yes, so within Continuous Delivery Director, we have plugins for Jira and for Agile Central, where we can generate defects, update defects, and also update user stories. So within the flow, you would put in tasks to do those kind of updates.
Great, that's all the questions I have right now. Oh wait, no, hold on one second. One more. Nope, sorry, I false alarm. That's all the questions I have right now.
All right, great. Keith, is there somewhere that the audience members could go that we should direct them if they'd like to learn more about today's presentation and kind of the CD director here in the near future?
I think, Christine, do you want to say what the best place to go?
Yes, if you can go to the next slide.
Oh, that's true. Sorry. Yes.
Yep. So we will be at Jenkins World next week. Come and see us. SauceLabs booth 205 and CA booth 302. And we will also be speaking on CI to CD in the cloud, orchestrate all the things, from 12:30 to 12:45. We'll be doing a couple of lightning talks in the booth where we'll also show off our pipeline as code feature. And of course, we have this integration with SauceLabs. And if you are interested in signing up for a Continuous Delivery Director or SauceLabs, we will be sending those links to you. It's saucelabs.com and cddirector.io. Both have a freemium/trial level. And if you come by either one of our booths, we'll help you get set up and get you started. And we hope that you will let us know what you think. Our products have feedback built in, and we are very eager to know your thoughts on the product.
Great. Well, I think that's all for today. I'd like to thank Keith and Titus for a great presentation. Also like to thank today's sponsor, CA Technologies, for providing the D-Zone audience with another great webinar. Thank you to Christine for helping us out with the moderation of the Q&A. I know that we have some more webinars from CA that are coming up in the near future, so be on the lookout for those. And lastly, we'd just like to thank everyone who joined us for today's presentation. We hope that you learned something new today that will help you in your developer career. Have a great day, and we'll see you all next time.